Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Well, this is going to be my very last video for the year. And as I promised, I'm going to be taking off the rest of the week. This is my birthday week. My birthday is December 31st. And someone asked me the other day about my birthday and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, yeah, I kind of got the short end of the stick. I was born December 31st, somewhere around 8 o'clock of an evening. I guess my mom and dad got a tax break, but I didn't get anything except, a whack. My sister, who was born 14 years before me, was born the very first baby in Washington County of Arkansas. And that was back in the days in which, that was kind of special. And so the hospital gave mom and dad, and my sister, a whole raft of presents, congratulatory presents. She's the very first baby born in the county 14 years before me. And like I said, I was born, 8 o'clock on the last day of the year. I got nothing. And then you combine that with the fact that it was my birthday, December 31st. Here's Christmas, December 25th. So what mom and dad so very often did is they combined birthday and Christmas. And I was like, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. But I did good to get anything whatsoever. For so many years, we didn't have much at all. I can tell you that. We just didn't have much. We were always blessed. We had enough. We had food. We had a good home, etc. So it's not like I was hurting or anything like that. But anyway, it's kind of funny about how things turn out. All right. Today, in today's video, we're going to begin an examination of Matthew 25, 31, and following. We've spent a good long time, I think more than sufficient time, in our examination of the parable of the absent master of Matthew 25, 14 and following. I tried to summarize just a sliver of what we were able to see in that extended study of that extended parable. So today, and I've got to tell you, in private conversations, I've actually had people say to me, okay, Preston, you've proven your point on Matthew chapter 25, 1 to 13, Matthew 25, 14 and following, down through verse 30. But, look, there is no question whatsoever that Matthew 25, 31 and following, through verse 46, that's the end of the world. That's the end of the Christian age. Well, I have to admit, that's what I believed for a good number of years. And I must confess, I've shared with you how when I moved to the East Main Church of Christ in Shawnee, Oklahoma in 1975, 76, I began teaching a ladies' Bible class. And we kind of finished out on what the previous minister had been teaching. So I asked the ladies' Bible class, what do you want me to teach? It was a ladies' Bible class of approximately 30, 35. And they immediately said, it was virtually unanimous. We want to study the Olivet Discourse. Well, here was the problem. As a young man growing up, my father and my brother-in-law and my oldest brother, they would get together on Sunday afternoons in a side room of my brother-in-law's house, and they would discuss Bible. Matthew 24 and 25, the Olivet Discourse, was very often the source of discussion. And I remember my father saying, I do not know what to do with this passage. He was referring mostly to Matthew chapter 24, 29 to 34, and he would say something like this. I know that these verses talk about the coming of the Lord. I know that verse 34 puts it in that generation. I know it didn't happen in that generation, but I don't know how to explain that. I don't know what the solution is. And he died before I had the opportunity to share with him the nature of apocalyptic language, the nature of covenantal language, the reality that Jesus was using Old Testament apocalyptic language of one occurrence after another of Yahweh riding on the clouds of heaven in judgment when he utilized one nation to destroy another nation. You see, my father was a fourth generation member of the Churches of Christ, and in that fellowship they're not encouraged, sometimes they're even discouraged from studying the Old Testament in depth. After all, the Old Testament, we were told, was nailed to the cross. You don't need to study the Old Testament. It's been done away with. And with that misunderstanding in mind, my father never, ever, ever engaged in a study of the prophetic language of the Old Testament. I can guarantee you, because he was open-minded, had my father seen the repeated use of language of the coming of the Lord on the clouds, with the angels, in burning fire, with the sound of a trumpet, and the destruction of heaven and earth, being applied to the events like the destruction of Edom at the hands of the Assyrians, the destruction of Babylon at the hands of the Medes and the Persians or the Assyrians, the destruction of Egypt at the hands of the Babylonians at a later period of time. Had my father been able to see that common prophetic language, and that it is figurative, metaphoric, non-literal, it would have been for him, like it was for me, a mind-blowing experience. And so, I, as a young man, hearing my father's confusion about the Olivet Discourse, I was as confused as he was. When I went to seminary, preacher school as we called it, my professors there were just as confused as my father was. So when I graduated, I had no earthly clue on how to deal with the Olivet Discourse. So when the ladies asked me, would you teach us on the Olivet Discourse? I said, well, I will, but you got to give me 1 year to prepare myself. And many of them said, wait a minute, you just graduated from seminary. You're supposed to know this stuff. And I told them the story of my father. I told them the story of my professors and their confusion. And I said, look, ladies, I know what the commentators say. And they're just as confused as my dad was. They're just as confused as my professors were. So I know what they say, but I don't know what I believe. I've never studied it for myself. So I said, you got to give me 1 year to study it, to make up my own mind about what I believe that it says. And it was like, well, that's about the strangest request we've ever had, but okay. And part of what I did, I took some old Bibles and I cut out the parallel passages of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And I gave those sections, those parallel sections, to my secretary, and I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to magnify those passages, blow them up as large as you can get them, and I want you to paste them side by side on cardboard, poster board, so that I can do a comparative study. She did. And I tacked them up on the walls of my office so that all I had to do was look up and to read Matthew 24, 1-3, Mark 13, Luke chapter 21. And do that side-by-side comparison. I was stunned. I was literally stunned to realize that, in Matthew 24, it seems like we've got 3 questions, but in Mark and Luke, there are only one question about the same event. Not 2 questions, or not 2 subjects. As a result of that study, and obviously there's much, much more to it, but as a result of that study, I came to the conclusion the Olivet Discourse cannot be divided. It's not about 2 subjects. I presented that information over a year's period of time. And I told the ladies, I said, ladies, listen to me. This is my view. I haven't found it anywhere else, but this is my view. And on the very last day of class, I said, okay, there it is. There it is. Tell me what you think. And there was stone dead silence. Now, remember, I've only been to this congregation for 2 years. And they sat there, and I thought, oh boy, here we go. I'm going to be fired. I'm going to be hung. I'm going to be drawn and quartered. And finally, the wife of our song leader, wonderful lady, spoke up, and she said, well, I just got to tell you this. And by the way, we had become very, very good friends. And she said, I got to tell you, it makes more sense than anything I have ever heard in my life. But Don, I just don't know if it can be true, because it's not what we teach in the churches of Christ. Well, before I could even say anything, a couple of the ladies spoke up and said, Juanita. One lady said, Juanita, did you hear what you just said? You just said, it sure sounds like that's what the Bible teaches, but that's not what we teach in the churches of Christ, therefore I can't accept it. And she sat there kind of stunned for a moment. She said, never mind. Just ignore what I said. But her comments opened up the floodgates of comments. And 90 to 95% of the ladies in the class said, this is fantastic. This is clearly true. The Olivet Discourse is not divided. Now, I have to tell you that when I presented Matthew 25, 31 and following, there was a lot of suspicion in that class. There were comments, well, okay, we can see the rest of it as AD 70, but what about this gathering of the nations? I mean, what about this coming of the Lord to gather all nations and reward all the nations? How could that be AD 70? And so we worked through those things, and like I said, by the time the class was over, 90, 95, perhaps more percentage were absolutely convinced the entire Olivet Discourse was fulfilled in AD 70. Now, I've taken the time this morning to share with you that bit of background. I hope that between now and after the first of the year, when I pick up our studies, that you will spend a lot of time on Matthew 25, 31 to 46, reading it in light of what we have seen thus far, okay? See if it agrees with what we have seen in Matthew 24, 1 to 34. See if it agrees with what we have seen about the coming of the Lord for the wedding. See if it agrees with what we have seen about the return of the absent master. I look forward to it a great deal. And by the way, when we come back from, after the turn of the year, I'm going to begin a series of videos on why right is wrong. I'm going to be addressing a video or a couple of videos, Professor N.T. Wright. Now look, I think the guy's an incredible scholar. I have, if not all, I've got most of his books. I quote from him in my writings. He is extremely insightful, one of the most highly decorated, recognized, and appreciated scholars in the world today. Now, does that mean I agree with everything that he says? Obviously not. And we're going to be focused on why right is wrong in regard to the redemption of creation. You can be looking forward to that. In the meantime, I want to thank you again for the fact that a few of you have sent me a personal birthday present of a check. Like I said yesterday, that was totally unexpected, but tremendously appreciated. And secondly, I hope that you will give serious consideration, set the birthday stuff aside. Totally meaningless, except my appreciation for your gifts. But I hope that you will give serious consideration to supporting our ministry in this upcoming year. I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, we need, we need your help to continue doing what we are doing. So please, give it careful and prayerful thought. And if you can at all, one-time gift or monthly support, it really doesn't matter. Everything helps right now. Okay? So, Happy New Year to you. I'll see you next year.